Okay, it's May 25th, 2023. This is my JK project part due after installing a 2018 GM L83 5.3 with an 8-speed transmission in it with displacement on demand. I drove this thing about 2,000 miles, loved it, and I was accelerating up an on-ramp, probably moderately aggressively. I mean, why not? You got a V8 in a Jeep, and that's what you're supposed to do. It, according to GM, had a timing event, and one of the lifters collapsed for the displacement on demand, and it proceeded to run on seven cylinders and make a knocking sound because the lifter was collapsed. So, after doing some research, contacting some friends, it was decided we were going to do. This was after I actually tried to fix it. Apparently, I put one of the replacement lifters in backwards, and the oil hole wasn't lined up correctly. Drove it 7 miles and did it again. So after that, I decided I wasn't going to mess with that anymore. So we pulled the body back off, and which was remarkably easy. So I left the Motec kit and all the wiring harness on the motor. So I disconnected the C100 and the C300 down to the chassis. I disconnected the radiator hoses. I did make some plugs for the wiring that goes back to the dash from the Jeep ECU, and I made a connection for the fan in case I have to do this again. So the only thing that's really difficult is the AC lines have to be disconnected from the radiator if you pull the radiator, which really and truly I needed to pull the radiator out of the way to do the cam change and get in the front anyway. So I did that. So the hardest part of this was vacuuming the AC out and recharging. Buying new coolant, buying new R134 was about it. I did have a couple other things. I was having a PO455 fault every 400 or 500 miles. I did tighten all the lines and check all that. But taking the body off is about a 4-hour deal for me now. And it's if I'm going to work on it, that is definitely the way to go. We did pull the cylinder head driver's side off to replace the lifter, and it was a pretty tight fit to get everything off there. I do have a ground hooked to the back that was kind of a pain in the ass, and also there's a foam pad under here that insulates the sound from the high pressure fuel pump and the direct injection injectors, and they'll tick. So this thing's supposed to insulate that sound. Well, that thing's wrapped around the high pressure fuel pump, and I did break the plug on it. We JB welded it and good to go. If I had to replace it, pulling the intake, it's a 15-20 minute job. It's no big deal. So we're getting this thing dialed. There is a lot of room to change plugs, and it's really not that bad. I think it's a little easier to get to than the 3.8. I've got a 209 degree thermostat in this thing. It runs 209 to 215 degrees depending on if you're going uphill or not. It idles right down and runs about 206 degrees when you're in traffic idling. So far we've been, probably the hottest has been about 80 degrees. So I got to do some stuff now, such as change the control arms, lower control arms, because it's got such a big lift kit on it, it kicked the axle back. I don't really like these springs that are in there. I'm probably going to end up changing those out and getting rid of those pucks. Definitely tires and wheels. It still looks like it forgot leg day, but it's coming around. Once we get tires and wheels on it, we are going to do a cool looking hood, get that on, and we'll be good to go. So my recommendations for doing a JK swap is buying a kit. I don't know if you want to do Motec or RPM Extreme or whoever's out there, and planning ahead. If you're going to use an LT motor or any of the motors with the displacement on demand, I would make sure that you either have all new lifters in it or just go ahead and do the delete before you put it in there. That would have saved me some headache and a month of not being able to drive my Jeep. glad I did it. It runs fine. I think the fuel economy is the same, maybe even just a tad better. I was getting 15 miles a gallon before. I don't expect to get much more than 15 miles per gallon now. It is a Jeep. It's a brick. It's got an 1.5-inch body lift and 4 inches of whoever put that TerraFlex lift or whatever on it. So it is lifted quite a bit. I wish it wasn't that tall for my daily driver, but very happy with the motor now. I'm glad that I've got a modern motor that's got low mileage. I'm not happy that I had to do that displacement on demand fix, but apparently that's a thing that's going to happen to all the GM guys. So I had a local exhaust guy work on it, do the exhaust. It's starting to get a little bit more loud when you start it, not terribly. It is a driver, but probably wish I would have went with duals, and I may end up doing that as I go along. But here we're done with the mechanical stuff now. The AC works great. Things shifts great. It drives smooth down the road. It runs 80 no problem, which in DFW traffic that's kind of the norm. So now I just got to start doctoring it up, making it look fancy and cool, and it's going to be my driver.